All right, we are live. Hello, 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 everybody. We are back again for another episode, I guess, for lack of a better word, of the Teacher Project 2.0. Myself, Really BTV, and Mr. Dr. L. Teddy is in the house. How you doing today?
Hey everyone, what's going on?
What's up? What's up? What's up? So how you doing today? How's it going?
I'm good today. I'd like to think that I am good today.
Well, that is good. I'm glad to hear you are good. We any funny teacher happenings went down this week over to the job that you can share?
That I can share. Let me think on that.
Okay. For myself, it is Black History Month. And what I told you guys last week that, hey Tommy, hey Abby, I told you guys last week that I wanted to make sure that I was teaching information that they did not already have. And so we've been having some great discussions in my classroom as it relates to Black history, things that my students did not already know. I'm having a whole lot of aha moments with my students. So that's been great. That's been a great moment of teaching. Teachers live for the aha moment. They live for that when kids finally get it and you see the light bulb come on moment. That's what we live for. So
Did
anyway,
you share with them any of the people that we talked about? What was it
I
last week?
did.
Okay.
I did. I told you one of my students said that they wanted to know who the first black person was to be educated. Now I told her, I said, now look, I can't tell you who the first black person was that got some education, but what I can do is I shared the names with her about the first Black man to get a BA and the first Black woman to get a BA. So we did have that conversation and she was happy to hear it. And again, it goes back to, you tell me what you want. Tell my students when we do our KWL, my goal is to make sure that I address everything in the W. What is it you want to learn? So that was when you helped me with that one, El Teddy, because that was one that I was like, what? I was like, the first Black person educated. I don't know about that one, but I was able to. She was satisfied with the first Black person to get a BA. So she was happy with that. Yeah, so that was my week. That was my week. So we decided that we wanted to come to you guys and speak on an issue. It's a hot topic. We sort of had a good conversation on your channel yesterday, El Teddy, that sort of talked about just the big scope of gender. We talked about the Wendy Williams statements. We talked about the Gabrielle Union, Dwayne Wade, Zaya conversation. And we really got into some real deep things. So we wanted to sort of take that issue, but bring it to the classroom. How does it relate to the classroom? What, as teachers, is our responsibility? What, as parents, which is who we want to gear the conversation, how you talk to your children about these issues, when you should talk to them, when it's, we know that they're going to be faced with issues in school. So what is appropriate? How should the conversation look? So that's kind of what our topic is today. You want to add, subtract, adjust any of that, El Teddy?
I just want to say that whether or not you are watching live with us right now, or whether or not you have to go back and watch the replay, don't be afraid to submit your questions to us via email or different things like that, because I know that a lot of the topics and things that we are going to discuss today do need to be discussed. And I can see for those people watching on the replay, you having to maybe point back to a video such as this or other videos that you may find across the internet where these topics are addressed. So I'm kind of excited to tackle some of these topics and really get the discussion going and take it from there.
Teddy, no, actually, maybe I should introduce myself first. I don't know why in the world I keep doing that. My credentials. Sorry. Okay. Absolutely. I apologize. No, I was trying to share the video on my channel. I'm sorry, you guys. My phone having some.
We're working on her.
Yeah, really. Y'all working on me. Technical difficulties. Please excuse the technical difficulties. Anyway, but that doesn't change what El Teddy said. He is absolutely correct. And so, as you can see, the picture, that is a on our thumbnail is the infamous gingerbread person. I've also included a couple of links in the description box that'll take you to some videos that'll dig deeper into the gingerbread person. So you can go to those links after you have watched our video. You can go to those links. So I'm going to sort of follow El Teddy's lead on this one, not just because he is a member of the LGBTQIA community, but also he has used this tool as a teaching tool more than I have. Matter of fact, he introduced it to me and I used it as a tool. So I'm going to defer to him, but we will start with, let's look at what the gingerbread man is. Let's take a look. I think I figured out this screen share thing, honey. Let's see if I got it right, child.
Oh God.
Look, I got it right. I think isn't that right? Can you see it? See, look
and
at me.
This one is the updated one because this is more updated than the one that I originally sent to you.
See, look at me. Look at me doing things. So, hold on, John. Over here. All right, so let's talk a little bit. The gingerbread man, and El Teddy can get more into how it was created and all of that, but it was a tool that is created, and as you can see, it's our, we're used to seeing the gingerbread man, but please make sure it's gingerbread person. And it breaks it down into the three categories when we talk about gender and sex, which is something that, first of all, people need to understand the difference between gender and sex. Okay, so we have your biological sex.
Sorry.
No problem. I don't know if you can see this on the screen. Y'all see my pointer on the screen, Abby? Do you see the pointer, or is that just me on my screen? Anyway, if you look down in the area, down between the legs area, that is sex. That is what you are born as. That is your biological. You are born. That's what the doctor sees. Your mama sees. That is what you got. That's how you're born. Okay. Gender identity. If you look at the top of the man, you see the brain. I'm sorry, the person. You see the brain. That is what you personally identify as. So if you were born a man, but in your mind, you identify as a woman, that is your gender identity. Okay, so you have gender by like your sex, what you were born as. Then you have identity, what you in your mind, what you are in your mind. Okay, what you feel that you are. Then you have expression, gender expression. That is what we see. That is the aesthetic. That is how you choose to express your gender, your dress, your hair, your makeup, your mannerisms. That is your gender expression. And that's not just a LGBTQIA thing. Everybody has a gender expression, whether you like to wear pants and sneakers, or you like to wear dresses and skirts. That is your expression. Okay. Even as a woman, I'm all woman, but I don't wear a whole lot of skirts and dresses. Okay. That's not my expression. So anyway, but when we talk about the genderbread person, I'm gonna get you, El Teddy. I see.
No, I'm just saying hi to the people.
Oh, I thought you were trying to say something. So that's when we talk about the three parts of the genderbread person. And again, you can just Google genderbread person and all of this pops up. Okay.
Wait, did you say orientation?
What now?
You're missing one.
Show me on the okay.
See that they kind of changed it a little bit.
Okay.
See how yours is attraction?
Yes, that's orientation.
That's orientation.
Okay, then I apologize. I missed one. So attraction, who are you attracted to? And that was yesterday when El Teddy and Ebby Reviews was explaining to me pansexual. Okay. And that correct me if I'm wrong, but pansexual, I guess, would fall under that area of attraction. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I want to make sure I was right.
Which is actually attraction, just not to confuse people, is where the orientation comes in. So it's identity, expression, sex, orientation. So identity is whether or not you identify as male or man or woman. Let me get the terms right, man or woman. Expression is how you is masculine, feminine, androgynous. Um,
Mhm.
and I forgot for identity, you can be non binary or gender queer is a term that some people have. You have the sex that is male, female, and even intersex, because we know physiologically you can have people who are hermaphrodites and may have both sexes. You actually have some people born hermaphrodites where both, which is extremely rare, but I've read about a case where both reproductive organs work. Usually one or the other works, but there was a case where both sets of reproductive organs worked. And the term is now intersex. They really don't use that term hermaphrodite anymore. That's more old school, archaic. And then you have the orientation where it was talking about attracted to. And what they wanted to do was they kind of said attraction because to make it more friendly to younger aged individuals by saying attracted to. Instead of orientation, they also did that because people thought that the term orientation kind of could be seen as offensive to it was I know. So that's why they just they've changed it to attracted to, and that's where you get into most of the spectrum. Well, I should say how the spectrum started, not the long 13, 14 letters that you have now, but how it originated was from the orientation piece with the heterosexual, bisexual, homosexual, pansexual, and so forth. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're good. You're good. I just want to say hi, Star Bell. Hey, Below. Thank you guys for joining us. Feel free to add to the conversation. Feel free to ask any questions. Before we go any deeper, I want to piggyback on what El Teddy said at the beginning. I do check the email regularly. El Teddy has the ability to check the email regularly. And I have been keeping up with what you guys have been saying. Most of you have been giving us some really positive feedback, but I don't want you to think we are ignoring anyone. I saw the emails. We are working on the series. It's going to probably be, I don't know how many parts yet. I don't want to speak too out of turn, but it will be a multi-part series on special education. So please, all of your questions and concerns in reference to special education are going to be addressed. We are putting it together. It's a lot that goes with that. You know, special education is a very big topic to tackle, but I don't want anybody to think that they are being ignored, because you are not. And feel free to add any questions or comments, because again, we do read the emails, and I would love to add a segment towards the end of the show where we answer any questions and have sort of a mail time situation. Okay. Hey, Danny, how you doing, boo? So, El Teddy, I'm going to ask you this question, and I'm going to let you kind of run with it. So, as someone who has had experience with trans students, as a teacher, what do you think the responsibility is as a teacher when you have a trans student in your classroom? And I hope I'm wording that correctly for you to express what I'm looking for. But do you know what I'm saying to you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, about I would say about 5 or 6 years ago now. This had to be around 2015, I believe. I'm from Miami. My original school district that I taught in was in Miami-Dade County, fourth largest school district in the country. Dear God. Anyway, as you can probably imagine, in South Florida, there's a large population of this spectrum. And so in large metropolitan areas such as Miami, a lot a lot of things that happen with regard to LGBTQIA issues start in those areas, the New Yorks of the world, the Miami, the LA. A lot of those large metropolitan cities are at the forefront of things that happen within the spectrum. So we had a workshop We had a school-wide mandatory. You had to sign in and make sure that you were accounted for about all things students and the spectrum or trans or whatever, all kinds of students that fell into the spectrum. That is where I originally got the gingerbread person from. So we were taught that they even went so far as, you can let me know if they do this in your district, or if somebody's in the chat, maybe your son or daughter or non-binary child had this experience. We had to start at the beginning of the school year. You know how you usually will go through the roster and you'll call out a student's name. It was, and this is going back to 2015, we had to be taught that you must hand out index cards. And we got a little packet of index cards in the in our little packet at the beginning of the school year. Long story short, what we had to do was we would write the student's name at the top of the card. We then had to ask them and leave a blank for them to write down, what do you want to be called? Because they may not want to be called Brian. Maybe they want to be called Brianna. They might not be want to be called Michelle. Maybe she wants to be Mikey. And we had to go with whatever that student, if the student's there, you will refer to me as such and such. We also had to put a list of the pronouns and have them circle the pronouns that they wanted us as teachers to use for them. And it was the 3 for each. So it was he, she. I forgot what the third one was. That was somebody who felt non-binary or were trans. Mr., Ms., Mix with the MX. His, her, I forgot, but we had them all. They already had it. We had already had that worked out, and we knew what to put. I can't even remember right now, but we had an issue where they had to circle. Now there was a substitute that came to teach at the school, and we were finding that substitutes, they had to redo the training for substitutes, because some substitutes wanted to be hard and say, well, it's the name that's on the roster, so that's what I'm gonna call you, and that does not work. That is illegal in that part of the world, where if a child says, the only time you can run into issues, and this is where, people in the chat, you may want to chime in. We did have an issue, and the school board, I don't know, has settled on how to deal with it. I think it's in the courts. A child wanted to be referenced as one gender or one pronoun or one name. Parent was, because of their own religious beliefs, so forth and so on, said absolutely not. You would not reference that child in that name. And there was a battle. Everything from the child running away from home, a whole lot of things. And so it became a big issue, because in education, okay, we are taught legally we have to respect the rights of students. But then when you add the parent situation in there, and if a parent is not willing to accept, and this was a high school student, to accept what that child says they are, then how do you, because technically they're still a minor, and technically it was a whole, as you can probably imagine, situation and an issue. I had a situation like that, and what I would do was, if the child was in class, I respected that child and called that child what they wanted. If the parent came, I respected the parent and referenced the child as the parent wanted me to. I did not try to get in between the two. So I think I forgot the original question. I'm going off on
as a parent. How as a student? Dang on it. How as a teacher? So me and you sort of had this conversation offline. No, I have not had this experience in my school district where there's a mandated universal way of dealing with how students want to be addressed, and their pronoun. Now, I can honestly say I have never asked a student pronoun, but I have asked students at the beginning of the year. I always give my kids a student information sheet, and on the sheet, one of the questions is, do you have a nickname or another name you prefer? And then I put in parentheses that it has to be appropriate, because I'm not calling you, little Bugatti, you know what I'm saying? But you know what I mean? But I do always ask that question, and I'm always respectful. Again, as long as it's, an appropriate name, it's not something silly. I'm always respectful of that. But again, I've never asked gender. Now, I know that I told you guys before, I did a workshop, a month-long workshop about 2 summers ago, dealing with the civil rights movement, right? And it was all about SNCC and the grassroots, and, it was all real 1960s and stuff. And what I found very interesting, though, was that one of the questions on that first day, how they do the icebreakers and all of that, one of the questions they asked us was what pronoun we prefer. And I'm thinking, and I immediately started looking around the room thinking, is there a transgender person in this room? And there wasn't. Now, there were a lot of gay people that I found out later on, and nobody in there made a big deal about it. But that was the first time that I had been asked about about pronouns. And so to see a school district that is that progressive, I can only respect that. Again, that's not even something that's ever been discussed. I can honestly say for as many.
And it's honestly not the norm. It's because living in South Florida, you have South Beach in Miami-Dade County, the next county over, Broward County. You have Wilton Manors, which is an entire city formed by and for LGBTQIA. The whole city council, from the mayor on down, it is actually, they call it the gay city, but it was formed for LGBTQIA. From everything, even in the town articles of incorporation and constitution and all of that stuff, it is in there. And so when you live in an area where that is the norm, you have to be at the forefront of that, because students had, and I, like I said, I can go back 5 or 6 years where students were starting to express themselves in the full scope and the full gamut of the spectrum in school, demanding their rights. So I applaud the school district for being on top of it. And so,
absolutely. And I applaud the fact that there was training, because sometimes as teachers, we know as teachers, they'll throw something at us and expect it to just be done with no training or little training. So again, what I want to make sure, so now we're going to get into the parent side of this, but what I want to make sure is that people understand that you don't have to agree, but you have to respect. Whether you agree with someone identifying as trans or a student identifying as gay, you don't have to agree with their lifestyle or what their choice is, but you have to respect that. There are students at my school that I don't want to speak for them, so I'm going to say I believe that they are dealing with the identity fluidity. Now, does that mean that they are going to be trans? I don't know, but they are definitely flirting with that expression piece of the genderbread man. They are, I have students who, are wearing makeup, male students who are wearing makeup and eyelashes and carrying purses and things of that nature. So there's that expression. Now, I don't know what they are identifying as. I haven't had the conversation, and I'm not, that's not a question you ask somebody. So as a teacher, that is the biggest thing, is that you have to respect that. And I think that, and I know for myself, I am going to start incorporating that into. I'm getting some feedback. Can you hear that feedback? Oh, it's gone now.
What's going on?
I think it's gone now. Okay. As a teacher, I know I'm going to start incorporating that. Maybe I'm going to add that to my student information list at the beginning of the year. What your gender, what pronoun do you prefer? You know what I mean? It's just a matter of adding it to the sheet, reading over the sheet, and being respectful of that. Now let's get into the parent side of this. Now, this conversation is not meant to tell a parent what to do. It is just, hey, Shauna, it is just for us to speak as educators, what we see, how parents can help their children deal with what is inevitably something they'll be dealing with in school. Again, it is not about whether you agree with the lifestyle or agree with, the idea of a trans student or a gay student, but it is all about how do you teach your children to be respectful in that environment. So speaking of El Teddy, going back to that story you just told, what advice would you give a parent who has been told that there is a transgender child in their child's classroom?
There's a part that I do have to introduce into this conversation that will help this conversation.
Okay, introduce away.
Unfortunately, one of the pieces that we gotta have to introduce into this when we start to discuss this part is race. I have been at schools that were predominantly white, where it was live and let live, and people embraced from the students all the way through to the parents and the adults. I've been at schools that were predominantly Black, and there was the complete opposite. And what I say by that is, when you start to introduce that, is this: the reason that the conversation needs to be had is if that child, the child that's not trans or not a part of the spectrum, has not been exposed to, has not learned about things that may not be common to them or they're not used to. Children are some of the most brutal and cruel people on the face of the planet with their mouths. I can tell you that as a teacher. What happens in the two scenarios is, and when I was in the predominantly white school, like I said, there was embracing. Even when there was another student that may have tried to get out of pocket, the other students corrected that student and said, no, we don't do that here. You're not going to do that. Nope, you ain't going to talk to them like that. Whereas on the other spectrum, when you talked about being in a predominantly Black school, because of some of the prejudices and bigotry embedded in to the culture, just be honest, it ends up in a fight because you got child over here trying to just live their best life and be who they are. Child over here who hasn't been exposed to that, who is not tolerant of that, and everything they know growing up has told them, I don't know what that is, and it should not be that way. So this child says something out of pocket to that child, and next thing you know, a fight breaking out. Because child over here just trying to live their best life is not going to sit up there and allow themselves to be bullied, disrespected. In a lot of cases, I'm not saying all, because some of it ends the opposite way, where it could end in tragedy. That child may become introverted. That child may fall into themselves, and you get suicides and stuff like that because of the bullying. But 9 times out of 10, the kids in the spectrum, be it gay, lesbian, trans, when you come at them the wrong way, they are ready. They are here for all the smoke you got. Baby, you ready to go? Let's get it.
Yeah, and not to be stereotypical either, but in my experience, my students who who are in the spectrum, they have and I understand why, but there have been a lot of the like you said, attitudes, and like you said, they ready, they always on ready. And I understand that it comes from that defense mechanism that they've had to sort of create because of being bullied as a child, and what we're learning more and more is that a lot of these kids are getting it at home. So by the time they get to school, they ready. You know what I mean? Like, I can't fight my mama back, but you gonna get it. You know what I mean? And that's another thing as a teacher that I identify. Me and you've had that conversation offline about that as well.
And so what ends up happening is, what I think, and like I said, I can't tell you how to raise your own children, but what I can say is, if we are going to live in a society where people are allowed to live and enjoy the fruits of life and not be bothered, Whereas you don't have to teach your child to um that is right, wrong, or in between. But what you do have to teach your child is that is another individual. That's their business. That's what they do. And I am going to allow them to live their best life and not pick at them. We do have to teach toleration. Okay. We do have to teach. No, you can't talk to somebody like that. No, you cannot say that about someone. And I'm gonna give this example. And some people hate when you give this example. Imagine, and we see it even today, Charlottesville, that situation. You saw all of those young faces over there. Those weren't old people. Those were young
Nope,
college
those were
students.
not old people. No, they were not.
And so what's happened is they are allowed to be racist and spew their racist ideology and bigotry all over the world. Tragically, a young lady ended up getting killed. Dozens of other people ended up getting injured in the whole weekend of events that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm using race first here. What you see is at their home, the racism and bigotry is allowed. It is taught. They are not sat down and said, no, you need to be tolerant of people of other races. You need to be embrace other races because those people just want to live their best life. And then we have situations like that. Likewise, in the same vein, when you have students that may identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual, all of the letters, queer, you name it, all of them. You have to teach at some point your child. I ain't saying you gotta like it or you gotta you know, be a part of the gay straight alliance. But what you do have to do is respect the human being because every human being is owed respect. And I'm going to say this, and this is something that I preach in my classroom to my students. And I hope that as a parent, some parents adopt this, what I'm going to say. There is no such thing as respect being earned. No, respect is not earned. Respect is owed and given simply based on that person being a human being. Period. When we talk about certain levels of respect, it is not, oh, I'm not going to respect you until you earn my respect. No, that's not how that works. When
Nope, that's
somebody
not.
walks into a room filled with other people, that everybody in that room is owed a certain level of respect. Now, things may happen where they may lose that respect or that may make you change how you interact with them, but respect is owed to everyone just by them being a human being trying to live on this planet. And that's something that we definitely have to begin to feed into the generation after us. After us, otherwise they might say, "Well, I don't respect that person. They ain't earned my respect because I don't like their lifestyle, so I don't have to treat them like a human being." And that's just not right.
Nope. And I agree. And I hate when I hear that, especially when I hear young people say, well, I respect you when you respect me. And I'm like, you don't understand this. There's a level of respect that I agree that should be given. Now, Bilo has asked a really good question. I put it up on the screen. What are your thoughts on gender-specific restrooms and how a trans person chooses which restroom to use and how it affects the hetero person and the trans person? And again, so because we're talking about education, let's speak specifically on school. So,
I dealt with that. I think we had that conversation. I dealt with that. I was the teacher because my bathroom, I was at the end of the hall, and my room was close to the teacher's restroom. I was the teacher that we had a few trans students in the school that had to give them the key to go and use the teacher restroom because it was because we can't just say, oh, I'm only going to think about the trans student. We have to think about all of the students as a whole. And even though this student may be trans and identify, it might be a boy identifying as a girl, the other girls that have to use that restroom may not be comfortable knowing that this person that may still have, you know, reproductive organs and so forth, that are male, is using the same restroom with them. And so what would end up happening is, in order to, and then the opposite, the boys may then bully this trans student that may have been born a male and is transitioning into female, and then you may end up having issues in the boys' bathroom. So what the school came up with was allowing those students to you, because we didn't have a trans sexual restroom. You know, when you got thousands of students, you got to, you know, have a restroom that's going to meet a lot of people at a lot of time. So, and quickly, so they would have to come to my room, and they would, I would give them the key to the teacher's restroom, and they would use the teacher's restroom so that for comfortable, so that it would be comfortable for both that student and the other students as well.
We had that issue, and we did the same thing. There was a bathroom that really was a teacher's bathroom that had a lock on it. It was a single stall, and that would be the bathroom. I think that as we move into when we're building new school, like for example, my school is slated for a new building. Because my school district does not make a big, I told you they don't make a big, I don't want to say make a big deal out of it, but I don't feel like they address these issues. That is something that now I'm thinking that, you know, when we're in the planning stages, we need to make sure that there are more of those. You know how you go places now where they have the men's room, the women's room, then they have the family room where anybody can kind of use it. I think we might need to add more of those. And I see your comment. Ebony said that trans people have been using the bathroom for centuries. Why is it anyone's business now? You know, again, this is one of those issues that was brought up by bigotry all of a sudden now. But I think that it is an issue that especially on a school level, that needs to be addressed. Because like El Teddy said, it's not about the trans student. It is also because, again, they are still kids. They are still trying to understand. A lot of times, I'm sure I've used the bathroom with a trans person. I didn't know they were trans. But when you know the person is a boy, born a boy, transitioning, it is a little different when you're an adolescent. It's a different mindset on a school, in my opinion. But I don't think it's a big issue to be addressed. You just come up with a system and it works, you know. Like at El Teddy school, he was the key holder. At my school, you know, it was a bathroom that was a single stall. It was a teacher's bathroom, but those students had permission to use that particular stall. Unfortunately, I think with the whole quote unquote revolution, I guess, more and more people are living in their truth that didn't always live in their truth. And so they followed the norms of society. And now, again, we have more and more, especially with children. We talked about it with the whole Dwayne Wade and his daughter's situation. More and more students are identifying at a younger age. And it does have to be addressed respectfully, you know, I think is the word of the day. How do you feel about parents allowing children taking hormones when they're transgender? Well, see, Danny, that's not an education issue. That's more of a parent issue. That's not really.
And that's dangerous too. I wonder whether they're not getting those hormones illegally, because no pediatrician and doctor that I have read that I know of is, you know, prescribing hormones to someone at that age, because physiologically the body is still transitioning from child to adult. Much less you talking about changing genders. The AMA has always maintained that that is something that should happen, and sometimes it's too. And I don't want to sound insensitive, but when we're talking about medically and physiologically, that is something that probably in terms of the hormones and things should not really happen until you get to be mid-20s, because I know for the male body, men do not stop growing until around the age of 22, give or take a year, or the person's body. So but the average age where men kind of are at the point where they have gotten to where they're going to get physiologically in terms of growth is around the age of 22. And I think about a lot of people that say, okay, I'm 18 now, so let me go ahead and start doing my own things and get on hormones, that may be doing that too early, and it may cause issues for them physiologically and medically, and things like that. So these are all things that if somebody is going through that they're certainly going to have to do their research on, consult with their primary care physician on, see a specialist about, and make sure that they are up to speed on what is the right pathway for them.
Exactly, Dami. And Dami had made a comment earlier. It's hard to educate. I don't want to misquote. It's hard to educate a child on the ever-growing LGBT spectrum when in past few years it's ever changing to broaden the inclusion. And I agree. And myself included, like I don't consider myself to be, an uninformed person. But when it comes to, a lot of, y'all were educating me yesterday. You know what I mean? So when it comes to things, I'm not, I know I don't have all of the answers and I don't know all of the, but what I do know though is that I do have, I have an obligation to be respectful in someone else's truth. I can't tell you what you're not. And I may not even like it. I've heard teachers make comments about how they feel about certain things. And my thing is they have a right to their opinion as long as they don't mistreat that child because of their opinion. And that's in anything. That's in anything. It could be a child and you just, you think their hair's, oh, why would they come to school with their hair looking like that? Their hair is crazy. As long as you don't treat them any different because you don't like their hair. And I say the same thing about if they decide to wear eyelashes, if they decide to wear makeup, if they decide to, shave off all their hair and wear a baseball hat and jeans. Like, as long as you don't mistreat that child because of how they are identifying, that is what it is. But you're right, Dami, it is hard. And it's something that we have to constantly
make this statement to another teacher that had some really bad thoughts. They never really would say it in a classroom, but some of their practices, I could sometimes see them, the prejudices and bigotry coming out. And this is how I helped that teacher get beyond that. I said, think of it like this. Imagine if a doctor or healthcare provider decided that their level of treatment for someone would be based on whether or not they agree with that person's beliefs or lifestyle. Think about all of the things that doctors know about us that we do that we should not do. They tell us not to do, and we still do it. And yet they still, every time we come and see them, what do? They give us and provide us the best care that they can. They do everything they can, hopefully, to give a good prognosis and to keep maintain professionalism and provide optimal health care for that individual. And I told the teacher, it's the same way. You are the educator. And whether or not you like this person, whether or not you think that this person's choices are the right choices, when they come into your classroom, you have an obligation to make sure that they are receiving an optimal level of education, regardless of your own personal gripes or issues with what they have going on. They're owed that.
Yeah, agreed. Hi, Ugly by Choice. Thanks for joining us. I hope you're still in the room. So again, I don't know. I know for myself, I'm sort of inspired to look into trying to get some things in place, because I do think more should be done than what's happening in my school district. The sad thing is, where the place where I worked that addressed LGBTQIA issues the most was when I worked at the jail, because we would arrest transgender women and men, or boys and girls, and the question became, where are they being housed? Where do we put them? How do we treat them once they're not treat them, but what do we address, or once they're in class? And at the jail, the smaller jails they didn't have a separate area. You went what you were born as. So they would make them, if they had tracks in their hair, they had to cut them out, but the girls had to too. You had to take them tracks out your hair, take the makeup, the wigs, and all that stuff came off. So we have now in our area, Baltimore had the bigger juvenile detention center, and they had the ability to have a separate wing, and so they would have a separate area for the transgender, and it was usually transgendered women. It wasn't a lot of transgendered boys. It was a lot of transgender girls. But we definitely had to deal with that with the jail, as far as where they are to be housed. And then once you make that decision, it's how do you deal with that issue? Because now they're being housed with boys who fully identify as boys, and so that was always a challenge. And that's always something that we had to deal with. And again, I had that conversation more working at the jail than I did now that I'm back in a public school county, back in the county system. So it's definitely something that I know I feel like I need to take back, on some level.
The other thing that, and I know this is something that we wanted to speak on, was it's getting to the point, because we were just talking about exposure and making sure that the conversation is had. But when do you start to have that conversation with a child? Because like I said, a couple weeks ago, we were in my chat on my personal channel, and a parent said my child's going to, I think it was second grade. I know it wasn't any later. I know it was elementary school, but I think it was second grade, and said, we were informed that there is going to be a trans child in the class, either in the class or at the school. I don't remember. Because I don't want to misspeak, but I know it was in the
class. I think it was in the class, because I remember that. But again, I don't want to misspeak.
But my thing is, you talking about 7 years old, average second grader is. Are you? And she was like, I don't know how to have that conversation. And she asked me about it being an educator, and I told her, simply put, do you want your child's first exposure to that to come from the outside world? Because a lot of times, everything else that they know is going to be based on that initial exposure to whatever that is. And then it may change, but it starts from the initial exposure to that. So as a parent, whatever you deem it is your way of thinking with regard to that, or how you want it to be addressed within your own household, when do you start to have that conversation? Is it when that child now has to go to public school and deal with the outside world? Most times before a child goes to public schools, their interaction with the outside world comes in places like the grocery store or different places like that, maybe church. And there's places where you can kind of limit what your child sees. But once they start to go off to school, the control that you have over the environment is little to none. And so we're not even just talking about just the trans students. What about parents that may be trans, or parents that may be same-sex parents and things like that? These are conversations that you got to start to think, okay, when do I start to have that conversation? Because my child may get exposed to that.
Or even if there's a teacher that's gay.
Mm-hmm.
I know you said that that's not something that you really discuss with your kids, but they figure it out. You don't deny it. You know what I mean? It's not something you wear, or, you know, you don't walk in the room, you don't lead with it. But if they figure it out and they address it, you don't lie about it. You know what I mean? So even with that, how do we teach our kids when they're going into an environment that they might deal with a gay teacher? You know? So, and Tommy brought up a good point. Have to be mindful of the fact that as early as 2008, trans issues weren't a topic in mainstream conversation, just like Black and civil issues. It's going to take time and understanding. Exactly. And that's why conversations like this are important. Conversations like what we had yesterday on El Teddy's channel are important, because I think that, and what I think we also have to do is create an environment where people aren't afraid to say what they have to say. They're not afraid that they're going to be attacked, or that people are going to, you know, you know what I mean? I think we have to create a safe space for people as well, because again, like Dami said, and Bilo said the same thing, people have conscious and unconscious biases, but we have to create an environment where people feel comfortable expressing themselves, so they don't feel like, well, you know, just because my opinion is different, now I'm ostracized, or people yelling at me or jumping down my throat. You know what I mean? So I think that's also, children and parents need to feel like they have a safe space to speak. Hey, Miss Old School, how you doing, babe?
Hey, Miss Old School. Another thing that we have to get out of the habit of saying is, well, and this is, well, I'll do it from the education standpoint first, and then we'll transition that into parents. Too many times I hear teachers say, well, when I was in school, this is how they taught me this, and it worked for me, so that's how it should. I'll give you a perfect example, something like rote memorization, where you either repeated something over and over and over and over and over till you learned it, or wrote something. Your teacher said, write this word 300 times and learn it. And it's been proven that is not a best practice in the realm and scope of education, through research and so forth and so on. But things changed, and there was development professionally in how we chose it. Even now, as teachers, we have to maintain professional development all the time. That's my whole job, doing professional development. But my point with that is this: when you all talk about the unconscious and conscious biases that we may have, we have to get out of the, so many times people get caught up in the, well, things in the 21st century is much different than it was back when I was growing up. Well, that's going to happen. I mean, imagine somebody who was born in the 1800s and had to come and live through the civil rights era, and they said, well, when I was growing up, we didn't have to deal with having all of these Black people and all of their rights and stuff everywhere, and I liked it the way it was. Well, things have to change, because everything that we were doing before may or may not have been right. And when we know better, we do better. And we have to be willing to change and make those changes and be agents of change in our environment.
Facts. So we've been talking for about an hour. It's been 53 minutes. So my question, are there any burning questions from you guys in reference to questions for us, expressions? You guys have been doing a good job participating, but is there anything that you want us to address or speak on before we make our announcements and head on back to our separate corners?
Don't me talk about I still look like I did 10 years ago on my old channel. Oh,
okay.
God.
Did you see? Okay, that's a separate. I don't want to bring that into this channel. Okay. So what I want to say to you guys, thank you guys for coming over. A couple of quick announcements. I told you, look forward to March. We're working on some big things for the month of March. Don't forget that it is still, Black History Month, you guys. Please make sure. I'm going to throw a name out for you. Here's your homework. El Teddy usually gives you homework, but I'm going to throw this name out for you to do some homework. The name Nanny Helen Burroughs, when we talk about educators in Black history. So the name Nanny Helen Burroughs, you guys Google her and learn all about her. That's your homework. Find out. El Teddy, I think over on his channel, is going to have another live this evening. Y'all know what he does on Sunday, honey. I don't need to say the name. Y'all know what he does on Sundays. I may or may not go live later on.
Yeah, we'll be having Sundays, our regular Sunday. I got to go do my homework for that. Dami, you need to hit me up and help me out with homework. I mean, with my Sunday today. Got to go do my research.
And with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap.
One more comment. Danny said, "Here I'm teaching classmen, and if you don't talk about it, it was okay." That's interesting. Things don't go away because you don't talk about it. That is for sure.
Right. Lord, that is so true. That is so true.
Things do not go away.
Please make sure if you have not subscribed to the channel, please make sure you are subscribing. Please feel free to share this video with anyone. I know Danny does a good job of putting us out there. She be posting on Facebook and everywhere else. I appreciate the love. If you are not subscribed, please subscribe. We are over 100 subscribers. So, honey, only 900 more to go. Y'all know to get to that magic number, but we're not even worried about that. We're worried about who we reach and information that we can share. The email is scrolling at the bottom, so please make sure that you guys have any questions, concerns you think of afterwards. Like El Teddy said at the top of the show, if you're looking at this on replay, please reach out to us. We want to hear it. We will address it. We will talk about it. With that being said, you guys, I hope everybody's having a great Sunday. For those of you who have a 3-day weekend like myself, please make sure you are enjoying your day off tomorrow. And with that being said, unless El Teddy has anything else to say, we're gonna close it on out.
No, I don't. Yeah, I'm just here. We're having a good time discussing things. Just to give you some announcements. We are going to address once again special education in a series come next month. Other series that we are going to address are going to be things like assessments, statewide assessments, and that whole umbrella, which goes into stuff like Common Core and things like that. And certainly we have to address the big elephant in the room, the charter schools versus public schools versus private schools.
Yes.
You know, some of us went to private school, and were, privileged. Just saying.
I don't know. It ain't like I made that choice. I wanted to go to the school where my friends went. That was a fight every year, honey. But anyway, we'll talk about it. We'll get into it. But yeah, we definitely get into that. All right. With that being said, if all what is it? If all minds,
hearts and minds
are in accord, we will say
what happened when you go to Catholic church, and
don't make me curse you on this channel. And with that being said, I'm going to hit the button so I can say what I want to say. You guys have a good evening. Talk to you later.
Till next time.
Bessie DeVos is getting her